All right, so welcome to the City Council Workshop for May 30th, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. Roll call.
Councilmember White,
Here.
Councilmember Voigt,
Here.
Councilmember Laura,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn,
Here.
Mayor Martinez.
Here. Right, at this time I'd like to stand for pledge. Ready, begin. Okay, if we have no conflicts to disclose, then I'll open to public comment period. Do we have public comment this evening?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, that will take us to item C, action items for C1, the continued discussion of the sewer rate study. Staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a continued discussion on the sewer rate study. We first met on April 10th, and Raftellus, the consultant, presented their financial planning model findings, the preliminary rates, and CIP within the presentation that they did. Council came back and had some questions, one being on the overhead rate that was being charged to the wastewater fund. That rate in our cost allocation plan is about 1.49 million, and currently we're charging about 650,000. So the concern was how to get the wastewater fund to get up to that full amount that they need to. So one of the scenarios that were provided was a ramp-up level. And as you'll see tonight in the presentation as well, there is that option for a ramp-up or getting straight to that amount in fiscal year 25. So we have Angie Flores. She's here. She's going to go over a new presentation, what we have done since April 10th, and their new proposed rates.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Okay, so as she said, I'm Angie Flores. I'm with Raftellus. Happy to be here with you guys today. As Jennifer said, we did go back and revise the financial planning model based on some of your comments as well as discussions with Thaxton and Jennifer. So we'll be going through those results in our presentation today. Real quickly, I'll go through and talk a little bit about the project scope and Prop 218, which John probably went over in the last presentation, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on those. The main part here that's going to look different will be the financial plan results and then the cost of service and the rate design, and then we'll show you some rate comparisons to communities near you. So just to review the project scope, we did do a 10-year financial plan, a cost of service analysis where we allocated your cost, your revenue requirement to your customer classes. We are presenting a 5-year rate projection that will be available. The adjacent agency benchmarking, the model will be available to your staff once we're finished and have the final results to, set and to move forward. We'll give that model to your staff. And then finally, we'll do the rate study report to comply with all those Prop 218 requirements. So Prop 218 requires that your revenues not exceed your costs, so your rates have to be cost of service based. The revenues from your rates must be used for utility service. And service must be available to your customers. So in the previous presentation to you back on April 10th, we presented to you a scenario with $7 million of debt financing. That was being used to help mitigate some rate increases. But in today's presentation, you'll see that's no longer in either one of the scenarios. And most of that is primarily due to these changes that were made to the CIP plan. And as I mentioned, we've been working with Thaxton and Jennifer and really going through those details of the financial planning model and ensuring that the assumptions are accurate and reflect your plan going forward. And so you can see here on this summary that's on the screen, the changes that we made to the CIP and to the capacity fee revenue, that resulted in about $11.4 million of positive changes to the model. So that's one of the reasons that you're no longer seeing that capital investment as a scenario. And please stop me if you have any questions. So the new scenarios are, as Jennifer mentioned, are the ramp up to the 1.49 million in annual administrative overhead. Again, no debt financing. And scenario 2 assumes that we will start paying that 1.49 million through rates in FY25. So immediately jumping into that 1.49. So here's scenario 1, and this is probably looking a little bit different from what we presented last time. I think last time we did show the graph on the right, which is your combined cash reserves ending balance. We've added the graph on the left, which reflects your operating reserve, kind of separated from your other cash reserves. And your other cash reserves are from your capacity fees, your capital fund, basically, and your R&R reserve. And so those are reflected in that combined. But that operating reserve is really important because that's, what you're funding through your rates, your pay-go, and your O&M. And so we felt like that was an important marker for you to see. So you can see on the table on the top, not sure if there's a mouse on here. Yeah, here we go. So you can see here on this table on the top, we're showing some rate revenue adjustments starting in FY24 of 5%, decreasing to 4 in 25, and then to 3 in 26, and then maintaining that through 28. And you'll see the administrative overhead increases from 25 to 28, getting to that 1.49 million. And under this scenario, with that ramp up for your overhead, we're able to maintain your operating reserve target as well as your combined cash reserves target. So here's scenario 2, and it's not a whole lot different. Again, those positive changes that we made to the CIP really helped that forecast quite a bit. So in this scenario, we've got 6% increase in 24, 5% in 25, but we're able to reduce that 27 rate increase to 2%. So again, not a big difference, but it's a little bit less. A little bit higher than we're showing in scenario 1.
Can I ask you a quick question? So I'm trying to understand the rate revenue adjustment is, we're not talking about a certain percent for every year. We're talking about 6% the first year, 5%.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So then it's cumulative. You have to add all those up to get the cumulative amount at the end of 28.
Okay.
So, but you can see here in scenario 2, even though we've adjusted the rates upwards a little bit, you're meeting the target, but it's a little bit slimmer, you'll notice in that operating reserve graph. When you compare that to the previous graph, you can see that the target balance is it's a little bit slimmer of what you're over-recovering.
Just to verify, you're speaking in for year 26 where you see that kind of change there.
That's correct.
Okay, I did have one other question. When I'm looking at scenario 1 and scenario 2, scenario 1 shows a cumulative increase of 17%, while scenario 2 is 18%. Is there a reason for the difference?
The only difference is because we're getting to the 1.49 million sooner, we're wanting to cover and maintain your target balances. And so it just required a little
extra
1% difference. This graph here shows the CIP financing summary. And so the blue bars here show the capital that's being funded through rates. The gray bar there shows the capital that's being funded with your capacity fees. And then the yellow bars are your grant funding for your capital. And so you'll notice that there isn't any debt because we took out that assumption in the model. So what are the key drivers of the required rate increases? So as I've mentioned, the capital investment is really the big driver here. You've got about $21 million worth of capital in your CIP between now and FY '28. So that's really the primary driver. We're continuing to fund your R&R, your Repair and Replacement Reserve Fund. We're assuming a $2 million contribution to that reserve fund. And we're using those dollars year over year for your R&R projects that have been identified in the CIP. In addition, just like everyone else, in every utility, we're seeing increased O&M costs due to inflation, due to the increased cost of chemicals, increased cost of, just your supplies that you have, and of course, labor as well. So those are kind of the three key drivers that are driving the need for the increase. So under Prop 218, we're required to do a cost of service where we allocate costs to your customer classes using industry standards. And so we've done that in the model. We allocate cost based on costs related to flow, BOD, TSS, TDS, and then you've got your administrative costs, your customer service costs, and your G&A. So on slide 16, we're showing the rates by class. And so you can see here we're comparing your current rates to scenario 1 and scenario 2. And these are broken up between fixed charges and variable charges. Your single family and your multifamily pay a flat rate, so that's assumed to continue. And you can see there that for your single family customers, the rate's going from $47.21 to $49.83 in scenario 1, and slightly higher in scenario 2 to $50.22. Your schools, their rates are also increasing slightly. Your commercial rates are, the adjustment here is related to the fixed costs here represent only the customer service, your customer service and G&A costs. And then for your industrial class, the fixed charges include those customer service charges, as well as the cost to recover some of your regulatory testing that you're required to do. The variable charges, then we recover all the other costs through that variable rate. And so you can see, won't go through all those numbers, but you can see how those are adjusted by class. And again, single family, multifamily, and schools do not pay that variable charge because they just pay a flat fee. So these are the monthly bill impacts. Again, single family and multifamily pay a fixed rate. So their increase for single family in scenario 1 is $2.62, $3.01 in scenario 2. Your multifamily class is getting a slight reduction. The schools, again, a slight increase. And then you can see the increases there to your commercial and industrial class. Any questions there?
Yeah, I have a quick one. So that, scenario 1 or 2, that's based on looking at the 5%, 6%?
Yes, sir.
All right, so then the following year, then that rate adjusts according to those percentages?
That's correct.
Is that correct? So on scenario 1, well, I'm guessing both scenarios, it'd be going down a little bit as you go. So it's
Well, the percentage increase goes down,
Right, that's.
but
what
the
I guess.
rate continues to increase.
Okay, say that again? Right.
Right.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. All right, thank you.
Real quick on that. So the rate increase, is it going to be, is it going to be close to the same dollar amount every year? And that's why you've got the percentages going down? So in other words, year 2024 scenario 2 is $3.01. Next year, the percent is going to be less, but the amount is still going to be more than $3.01? Is there, do you ever put together a model where we can tell our citizens that it's going to be $3 a year for the next 5 years? Do we have to go with these percentage rates? It would be much easier to say, you know, it's going to be $3 a year, whatever the number is. Maybe the year's number's $3.20, and so your percentage is going to go down each year, but it's easier for us to present that to the community, I think, if they understand it's going to be X amount of
The
dollars
same,
every
the
year.
same percentage increase every year.
Same dollar increase.
Same dollar increase. So we didn't look at it on a dollar increase. We did try to, keep those rate increases level in the financial plan. The problem we ran into is because your costs, because remember, we're increasing the cost of the overhead, right? So that's a big jump. We've got your PAYGO that's also increasing, and then we've also got the R&R contribution. So on the front end, we've just got bigger jumps than we do on the back end, which is why you see the 6 and the 5 at the front end. So when we tried to level those off so that we could say keep 3% for the 5 years, it didn't work. It didn't work to maintain your targets.
No, that I understand. I'm just looking at if there's a way to keep a level rate amount that goes up every year.
It's certainly something we can look at.
The model that you're going to provide to staff, would that give them the ability to say, listen, let's find out what that number is that'll still come out with the results you're looking at? If that number is $3.50 every year, I think it would be nice to have that as an option to consider.
Yes, they will have that model, and we can certainly,
So-
try to run some
So
scenarios.
what we're trying to do, and I agree, and that's kind of where I was going to, is when we sell it to the public, they look at the dollar amount, and they want to know how much their bill's going up, and they want to know how much their bill's going to go up the following year, and so forth and so forth. So at the last time we did this, we proposed, there was a dollar amount that we said, well, you're going to go up from this to this, and the following year is going to go up another $1.80, and then it's going to go, and we gave them dollar amounts to be able to understand how it's moving.
And so we can do that now based on the two scenarios, but I think what I'm hearing is council would like to see that dollar amount remain the same for the 5 years, is that?
I just think that if the numbers work, I mean, if the dollar amount for the first year becomes $6, then maybe not.
Right.
But I think when I hear 5% or 6% as a citizen, my first thought is, okay, inflation's at 8%, and you want to go up another 6%. Then you start to, it's not, I think what we really need to talk about is what's the dollar impact
Okay,
that people should know about? And that's where I thought the idea is, since basically you're sort of doing that because the interest rate's going down, or the percentage is going down. But again, if the first year, and I think we could also do something like that. I think when we did it before, it was $5 a year.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. We had
It
a
was-
level number that we sold to the public.
Yeah, and so it wasn't like, so what's gonna happen is, and I'm looking at my wife when she, because I don't ever pay this bill, she does. But it's like, okay, so you guys went up $250 this year, and now you're up another $275, and how much is it gonna be, that kind of thought process. So I may be, just making too big of a deal out of this.
Well, and we don't know what the numbers are. If the numbers, the way it is, play out, and yeah, it might go up 2 now and 250, whatever they are, that might be okay, rather than having to go and adjust everything to keep it flat. I don't think,
So let's look at single-family residential only. The highest increase if council chooses scenario 2 would be $3.01. And then,
That's just for 2024.
correct, and then the next increase would be less, and the next one would be less.
Less percent, but more dollars.
Well, then-
Incrementally, no.
Yeah, it would then be 50/22, because that would be your starting point,
Right.
times 5%. I can't do that math in my head. That's
That'd be
250.
308, 309, something like that, so it is.
No,
No,
it'd be like 250.
Be about 250.
At 3%, you'd be at like $1.
That's kind of where I'm saying that, because we had to start a little bit higher in the beginning, we can't really lower that for you to maintain your targets. So if you were to keep it the same as the $3 from here on out, then you would be over recovering from this graph that I'm showing here.
So now understanding what you're telling me is, we could actually, if we did do level dollar payments, start out lower the first year than 301.
But that may not maintain your reserve balance that you need to meet your targets.
You don't want to dip below the target balance.
that's what I'm saying, those numbers that they've calculated have already determined that. So-
How much, but if, and I'm just throwing numbers out here, we have a contingency, I saw earlier, $2 million we're putting into our annual reserves? And if we miss our numbers in the first couple of years by 50,000, 100,000, but we're starting off with a lower payment in the first year. I mean, I don't understand why you cannot, get a level payment that is gonna stay the same, and if it goes lower than what rather than saying 301, if we can say, well, it's gonna be 290, but we're not gonna raise it each year, it's gonna be 290 every year. If we do not meet our, you said our reserves. So in the early part, our reserves are gonna be a little bit lower, but we're starting with pretty significant reserves. And so if our reserves are only gonna be lower by 50 to 100,000, I mean, if you're telling me the reserves are gonna be lower by $1 million, then, that's a whole different story. But, I don't know, am I making sense the way I was thinking?
I'm going to add something that's going to, I got a question that might change the viewpoint a little bit. So we're projecting 5 years out. We're going to have residential growth in the next 5 years. What I generally don't like to see is existing payers paying for future demand. Let some of those future people help pay for that demand. The question is, the additional single-family residences are being built between now and the next 5 years. Is the demand for that increasing greater than what we're able to do now? So for example, with them coming in, do we have to then, or is it costing us more money? I don't want to see the current ratepayers paying for the future development, and when the future development starts showing up and they start paying their bill, are these numbers a little bit more accurate in terms of we'll have more revenue in 2028 because we'll have more ratepayers paying in on the system? But what the amount that the additional revenue that they're bringing in, does that cover or does it exceed the monetary demand that they're putting on the system? Does that question make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and in the model, you are modeling out future revenues based on growth percentage.
Okay, so
that
that
is
has been
included in the
accounted
model.
for?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
As well as the capacity fees are coming into the model and being used to fund your growth projects.
Okay.
So all
that-
that's been assumed in there.
Okay, so then going to Lloyd's comments, if I understand him, I tried to do the math, but then my number didn't come up right. You're on page, okay, so on page, so on page 20 of the agenda, so slide 16, with scenario one, we have a current bill of 4721, and I'm gonna nickel and dime this. 4721 times 5%, so times 1.05, I get 49.57. Why does it show 49.83?
I think it's 6% the first year.
On scenario number one, it was 1%, right? Or 5%?
Well, it's probably a little off, but not exactly
5%.
Okay. And so using the numbers that were in there, and so I came up with the largest increase in future years was only like $2. And some of the years were only
But I think
$1.
if you do it monthly, you're doing it annually. I think if you do it monthly, it's gonna go up a little bit each month, right?
I don't know. Our bill
No.
changed on a yearly basis, correct?
Yeah, these are monthly.
Okay. All right, so then
You
mine
add
was,
up- you
mine was
add
a
up the
yearly
month,
calculation.
yeah.
Okay.
But just something that we learned early on, I don't know if you know this, we cannot charge current customers for future customers' expenses, correct? I mean, that's one of the things, we cannot built in a cost.
And I don't want, make sure we don't want to do that.
I don't think
yeah.
legally we
Yeah.
can do that. You can't build in a cost to make current, say the 50,000 people that are here to pay for the next 10,000 who come in over this 5-year period. We can't charge them more now to cover that cost and have the people coming in 10 years pay less.
Your new connections pay your capacity fees.
Right, so the service,
So I'm
Yeah,
just
you don't
making
need to
sure
worry
that,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah, okay, so we're fine, okay.
Yeah. Yes, we've assumed that those capacity fees that come in, we've got growth assumed in the model. And so then the capacity fee revenue comes in to pay for those growth projects. In addition, we're currently calculating your capacity fee again as well to make sure that it's where it needs to be.
so I noticed on your bar chart that you didn't have capacity fees after 2023, 2024, correct?
We've got capacity fees coming in, your projects, that just represents the projects that are assumed. So those capacity fees are still coming in and going into your capital reserve fund. So it's not that they just stop, it's,
But you don't
We
show
don't have
that as
any-
I mean, these blue are estimates as to what the what the rates are going to be over the next 5
no,
years.
the blue bars here represent your projects that are paid for
Okay,
with rates. We call those your pay-go projects, so they're non-growth projects.
got it. Okay, thank you.
So going back just to the rate before what I'm looking for is a number that I can let the public know that, let's say we choose, let's just say scenario one. If we have scenario one, that we can know for now that their rate is going to be $49.83, beginning, what is this, 23 or 24?
This is 25.
25? 20,
No, I'm sorry,
For-
24.
for 24,
Sorry,
okay.
it was right in front of me,
yeah, there it is.
24.
So, so a dollar amount saying that, okay, for the next 5 years, we're going to increase, by $25, a number. That's all I'm looking for, is a number that we can tell the public, this is what your your rates are gonna go up $25 over the next 5 years, and it's gonna go up, it's gonna be spread out throughout the years, maybe not equally, a little off here and there, but at least they know, okay, we're gonna pay $25 over 5 years, and however that adjusts, that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for, whatever the number is, don't hold me to 25, just do that out. But, because I feel that if we're gonna try to go and level, that's gonna start to change all the numbers. I think that's gonna, I don't know, you tell me from the financial part, is that more cumbersome to have to go out and change those to make a dollar amount level?
Well-
I don't know the finances.
I'm more worried about the perception of saying, we're raising your rates $25. They're gonna think, oh, okay, so next year I'm paying $25. I mean, that's the first thought they're gonna have. My thought is, we're raising your rates $3 a year for the next 5 years.
Yeah, but we can give
Right.
them a range too, if we're gonna, between $2
So
and $3.
say that number's $10. I think what Councilmember White is saying is average that out every year, but then we would have to look at the modeling to see if we need to dip into.
But I think it would go
reserves.
lower the first year. I think it would be a
That's
lower
the-
impact on the
correct.
first year.
So say it's $10 over 5 years, a flat $2 every year, we'd have to do the model to
Right,
see.
but if our message is it's gonna go up $25, half the people are gonna say $25 a year?
I was
You're raising
thinking
Well,
that?
not if you explain it. I mean, we're gonna go
But
up.
how do you explain that? How do you explain that so that they can hear all of that? They're gonna just hear that first number.
That's true. That, I understand what you're saying, but the numbers I don't think are gonna be that much. You're looking, in my opinion, probably between what, 260 it says, and it's gonna go lower than that, so average around $3, around approximately $3 a month over the next 5 years.
That's why I'd like to say $3.
That's fine, I don't.
Exactly.
Just
Whatever
wanna-
that number
I
is.
just wanna make sure that, but I'm just saying to go back and make that number exactly something over the next 5, I think.
So if I can jump in and have somebody check my math, but if we take 47.21, we times that by 17%, we end up with 55.24, and that's billed 6 times a year, right? So, and then if,
It's compounded, though, it's not.
I thought it was mentioned in here that at the end of it, at the end, the bill is 17% higher than what it was when we started. Am I correct?
Right, but that's
Right.
compounding each year or each month. It's compounding to get you to that point. You can't take that 17% and just.
Yeah, we can work with staff to give you those dollar amounts and see what it does to the model if we keep it. Yeah, although I know that we tried to level it out.
Yeah,
and it
and
didn't-
the only thing I would caution too is that because of the bonds that we hold for the wastewater fund, there is a debt covenant, which means that you have to be at 120%. What that means is your revenues coming in versus your expenses and your capacity fees, there's a calculation that's done each year. And if you don't make that 120%, that gets reported, and that could be a credit rating issue.
And so that's kind of what I was mentioning, if you look at this slide 12, because we did try, I think your financial advisor had actually asked us to look at keeping those level. And without that 6% increase, that 6 and 5% increase in 24 and 25, your reserves really drop below the target as well as your coverage. And so, but we don't want to maintain the 6 and 5 because then you're going to be almost over recovering because of growth that we have in the model. So that's how come they continue to kind of decrease. So I'm not entirely sure that we'll be able to kind of give you that level amount without hurting your coverage target and your reserves target in
And
the
that's an
beginning.
explanation that I'm comfortable with. I understand what you're saying, so.
Yeah, I just, I like the direction we're going. I just, in my opinion, I don't think it needs to be a level. I'd rather have them see the initial $3 and then over 5 years, it's gonna go, okay, then the next payment will be an increase of $275, then $250. And that's what we give them, and their bill is a 5-year extrapolation saying, okay, here's what you'll be paying year 1, here's what you'll be paying year 2, here's what the increase will be in year 3. And I don't necessarily think it needs to be level, but what I'd prefer to see is that it's going down or it's staying the same. I don't want to see it go up because I think that's harder to plan for. So, and I think, as Councilmember White put it, and Mayor Martinez, is people with fixed incomes are going to want to be able to plan ahead for that increase. And so if they know the dollar amount, it's going to be a lot easier to calculate. And whether it's level or it drops, it's still going to be easier to see if they can see that, right? And maybe what we show them is like 5 years, over the next 5 years, it'll be 3, 2, 2, 2, 1 for a total of X. So that's just my thoughts on that. But I do think seeing a dollar amount rather than a percentage is going to work a lot better for our customers.
Yeah, we always recommend that you, when you're presenting to your residential customers, is that you present a dollar amount. Yeah, especially when we're talking higher rate, you don't have real high percentage rate increases here, but sometimes we have clients that have a 25% rate increase, but it's off of $12. So, putting that into a dollar amount versus a percentage really helps reduce that confusion.
One quick question. You indicated the $7 million bond that was discussed in the first presentation has gone away because of the a reduction in capital improvement. Now, does that mean that we are eliminating some of the necessary projects, or are we just reducing the dollars for capital improvement year over year?
No, there was actually one project that was duplicated in the CIP. And so when we went through, like I said, we worked with Jennifer and Thaxton to really go through all of the assumptions in the model. And we found that there was a model that was duplicated in the CIP.
So we're not eliminating any projects that we need for the wastewater treatment facility.
None of the identified CIPs in the wastewater master plan have been eliminated. The majority of the takeoff was from when they went to identify the funding source of the major CIP we've got coming up, which is the Mesa Lift Station and Force Main. They identified the funding, but added it cumulative to the overall project, so it made it look like a higher CIP cost.
They just want to make sure we're not.
In conjunction with that, some of the repair and replace unknowns were taken out that are in the future 10 years, because we will start figuring those out in these 5 years.
And then my last question is, in scenario one, we kind of pull that payback to the city general fund, right? We kind of pull that, we extend that, right? We slow it down. To offset the impact to the consumer, is it possible to pull that out another year? Or is that not legal to do that?
You can do that. You can choose to do that. The problem is if you do that and you have any stress on your general fund, you're not going to be able to get your amount that essentially your wastewater fund should be paying. So if you have any issues that come up with the general fund and you haven't adjusted the rates on the wastewater side to provide their impact to what the general fund is providing, you're not
Right.
going to be able to go back and get it if that were the case.
So general fund money's being tied up, or which potentially services or CIP money's being tied up because it's carrying the wastewater treatment plant, so to
Correct,
speak.
right. You're right,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, I think you have 2 more slides still.
Yes. So this is the bill comparison. We have several communities here that were identified by Jennifer and Thaxton. And so you'll see these are the single-family residential bills in those communities. We've also identified their long-term debt that they have outstanding in those communities, kind of as a way for you to see how you compare to those communities from a capital investment perspective. So you can see here that you're the second highest rate currently, and with the scenario 1 and 2, you would stay there. But the highest community, Rialto, is at 6219. So, it's still about $12 higher than scenario 2.
But we don't know though, or can you tell us how many of those are up for their analysis as well? To whether those are accurate numbers, whether they're planning to increase as well or not?
I don't recall that we were able to find that information. And we're not currently working for any of these communities, so I'm
So
not
that-
sure.
That number is just their current number.
That's
then.
just their
Their
current
current
number.
number, so they very well might be in a process of doing what we're doing, we just don't know.
Right.
We also don't know, other than Ukaipa, which ones of those have recycled water capabilities, which is why we had to go much higher, was to build a plant that could provide recycled water.
I think that's a very important point, and so everybody on here is downstream of us. That was kind of the thought process here, keep them local and in the area. And of course, we included Banning because they're the natural comparison to Citizens and Facebook and et cetera. Banning is in a whole different watershed. They go to the Colorado River Basin. Not only do they not have recycled water, but they don't have to treat to our levels. They're under a completely different set of rules. And then as you go down, Ukaipa is very similar. Obviously, they don't have the debt that we have, having built their plants, a long time ago. Redlands is a little bit unique. They don't even have a discharge permit. All of their water is used for cooling towers at the power center and percolation ponds. So they're kind of unique. And San Bernardino, just by chance, I was checking theirs to compare their commercial because they're published. I think they've got 2 more years on their current rate study before they'd be facing one. But no recycled water there. And then Rialto is working towards it, and that's what they're facing for their rates.
Yeah, it's really hard when you're looking at these bill comparisons, just because, you know, we don't always know the details of their system. We don't know how they paid, you know, for their current facilities. You know, when they do their last rate study, are their rates current? Just all of those little details can really make a difference on the rate, so. So next steps, hopefully you feel comfortable with what we've presented today. We'll try to work with staff on, you know, see one more time if we can level out those rates. But hopefully, you know, this will allow you to make a decision on scenario 1 or scenario 2. At the next council meeting, we propose to have you consider the projection of those rates, and then authorize the notice for Prop 218. We'll be working on getting a draft of that notice to Jennifer this week. And then that Prop 218 notice will be issued. The hearing for 218 can be held 45 days after the Prop 218 notice is mailed. And then assuming that you don't get, it's the majority of your customers protesting the rate, then you can move to consider approval of the rates. And we're targeting an effective date of September 1st.
So is there a way, maybe someone on your table here, or maybe Thaxton, give me a summary? I mean, I'm looking at scenario 1 versus scenario 2, but what are we really deciding on between scenario 1 and scenario 2?
It
You know.
boils down to the cost allocation plan and whether or not you want the admin overhead started immediately or progressive.
And do we have a recommendation from you, Jennifer?
I would recommend that you want your wastewater fund to be fully sustaining itself. And that's only because if something were to happen, let's say sales tax reduction or anything along that line, and you have any stress with your general fund, you want to make sure that your other funds are paying their fair share.
Scenario 2 is the one that would
Correct.
fully sustainable by the wastewater
Correct.
fund. Okay.
I had a quick question back on the part where you showed the grant on the bar chart. So where it showed the grant there in yellow, that's a significant portion of grants there that affects the funding. Are those grants in progress? Are those predicted grants? Are those estimations that we're highly confident, or how?
That was the projects that were allocated with the state and local fiscal
Oh.
recovery funds, the ARPA funds.
Okay.
And so there was, I believe it was the Mesa project, which is being funded by a
Okay.
portion of those dollars.
All right, so then that's highly and then on the 218, I won't go too much into that now because we still have another meeting to talk to. So the other meeting, then, you'd bring back your proposed rates to see whether or not we're gonna be able to balance or not, and give you numbers and so forth. And then after that, we will, let me see, talk about issuing the 218. We have to authorize that to go ahead and go to the 218, and then we publicly notice that and then talk about that. So I won't go too much into that, but we had a majority protest. We have to come back and do funding projections again. Is that usually the scenario?
We would have to look at what we're gonna do with
Yeah,
that, any
to
type
figure-
of
okay.
rating.
And that's why I didn't want
Yeah.
to go into that now. It's too early for that.
I did want to note the target effective date of September 1st. The bills, the ratepayers would not see that increase until their November 1st billing because we bill after the service.
So in the last meeting, we brought up the concept of some of this debt coming from the city. Did we just, what's that?
We don't need that.
We don't need that,
That was the $7 million discussion,
right?
and that's been done away with because of the duplicate in the CIP, the duplication.
So there's no advantage still to, instead of buying more bonds, borrowing it from the city and paying the city back? To keep their payment?
No, with the reduced CIP, we no longer needed to issue debt to
Okay.
mitigate the rate increases.
Okay, all right.
I think to clarify though, what you were asking was, there's no need for general funds to be added in order to prevent the rate increase at all? Is that what you were kind of
My question
entertaining?
was, if we borrow it from ourselves cheaper,
Ah,
can we get the rates lower? But
no need for borrowing.
it doesn't sound like that's a concern or an issue anymore.
Yes, it's no longer an issue, but it wouldn't, for Councilmember Voigt, the general fund would have to do a loan, and then the wastewater treatment plant would end up paying it back, and so it's not.
Compounds it.
Question. This might be for Jennifer. So in comparing scenario 1 and 2 and looking on slides 11 and 12, and comparing the operating reserve balance to the target balance, if in scenario 1 we're doing a ramp up, why does it look like in scenario 2 that fiscal years 2026 and 2027 that the reserves are barely above the target? It looks, to me, I almost would think in reverse, that if we put more up front, we would have the larger balance above the target in future years. Is there a reason why 2026 and 2027 estimated operating reserve balance is very close to the operating reserve target balance?
It's just a cumulative of costs year over year. And so I believe in the model, we have a use of fund balance in, is it 24, which we do, and maybe 25. So it's just the way that the costs impact the amount of reserves that you're using year over year. So then you have a positive cash flow starting, I believe, in, was it 26?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, you can.
Gotcha, okay, all right, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Right, okay, so then we need to discuss for direction for staff, scenario 1 or 2. So, and, staff recommended 2, for that reason of, maintaining our wastewater. What we did?
Yeah, the cost allocation.
And as far as the public concern for money, that started off at the 50 instead of the 49, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. And if we went 1, then a little lower because of the 5% instead of the 6 to start with, but we run a little more of a risk of having it fully funded or the wastewater.
I'm sorry, how do you mean?
I'm just trying to see what this, because it doesn't look that significant here. I'm looking at that level graph that shows everything going across, but my computer's going crazy.
Right, well, and it's always just looking at how do you want to impact your general fund? So if there were any issues that were to come up, again, you want to make sure that the wastewater is paying its share, because you wouldn't be able to go back to get the full cost allocation if the rates aren't sustaining that. So you would be limited as far as your choices go if your general fund becomes stressed.
And 2 gives us that slightly more security than 1 does.
Correct.
I think what we need to focus on is 39 cents more than 1, right?
Yeah.
That is true.
I mean, 39 cents more a month than the other one, and we have sustainable.
Yeah.
Correct. I think if you're looking at it annually, I know that these numbers aren't completely jiving, but in the first scenario, it's an impact of $108 annually. If we were to put that for the citizens, what is their annual impact? Specifically going towards the fixed income kind of look. And the other one is 103, so we're looking at a $5 difference. Really in going that and ensuring that we're fully funding the utility itself, I think is important.
Do we have any more questions before we give direction on one or two?
So, I know that the cities were actively looking at potential grants. Obviously, that would have an impact if we were able to get something. And all it would do is just either stave off an increase for a particular fiscal year or reduce that increase potentially, or not have any effect at all. Do we-
The grants that we're currently looking for right now have to do with the recycled water distribution and how that's going to look. And because we don't have a plan in place right now for that, it hasn't been included in
There's no way
these.
to look, okay,
Yeah.
understood, thank you.
Okay, so I'm comfortable going first, saying I support scenario two. Get consensus from council.
Yeah, I
Support
agree,
too.
and thank you for the report and
Yeah.
the answers. It really helped me a lot, so I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Two as well.
And as far as the leveling again, they'll try and bring, but if again, it doesn't work out, as long as we see the numbers, you're okay with that?
Yeah, again, I think Mr. Lara made a good point, is showing it on the bill specifically. But again, if it were just, we can focus on your increases going up $3 a month, I just think that's easier if we can do it. But I understand that the issue with getting near your reserves. But if it's not that much, not that significant, and we go down a little bit in our reserves the first few years, and we can get a level payment a level increase every year, I'd like to know if that's possible, I guess is what I'm asking. Yeah, and what that
And what
number
that
is.
impact would be to the general fund, so we know, yeah, I think that's a good
Right.
idea.
And yeah, and I think the biggest point too would be look at, we're getting that debt coverage as well, so we'd want to calculate that.
Good. Okay. Any other suggestions for staff? Or-
No, I just had one question. I'm the newest member to the council, so I'm trying to write down all of these terms. So I think I have it, pay-as-you-go are non-growth projects. O and M, I'm assuming, is operating and maintenance costs. Capacity fees are those that are getting hooked up to the system.
Yes.
And then you used one other term, G and A.
General and administrative costs.
Thank you. Sorry.
Sorry.
Great. Nice review for some of us. Good. All right. Does staff have any other questions or direction needed? No? Okay. We thank you. That was well done.
Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you.
Okay,
We
you're
appreciate
welcome.
that. Okay. Well, if we have direction from for staff and no other questions from council needed at this time, then I'll go ahead and adjourn at 5:53 p.m.